Everyone knows that exercise boosts physical capabilities and can even change physical appearance. But did you know it also improves cognition and the condition of the brain? Professor Jeff Edwards provides 3 ways that exercise affects the mind and can improve your quality of life. Exercise feeds the brain. Due to its high metabolic demand, the brain needs good circulation, and exercise induces strong blood flow to deliver all the nutrients required to carry out the brain's job. Exercise also secures priceless memories. People hold their memories dear, yet in reality, we only remember a fraction of our lives. Exercise improves memory by increasing molecular targets like the brain-derived neurotrophic factor. The more brain-derived neurotrophic factor, the more the memory improves in function and capacity. Finally, exercise indirectly pacifies stress. Exercise reduces stress receptors in the hippocampus and minimizes the effect of stress hormones on the brain. Additionally, working out stimulates the release of endorphins that act on opiate receptors in the brain to create the blissful feeling of a workout high. If the well-known benefits of exercise don't motivate you to start moving, hopefully the unexpected impact of exercise on your brain and cognition will. So, show your brain some love and start exercising.
In this lecture, the speaker was talking about benefits of exercise. At the beginning of the lecture, the speaker covered many topics which include physical capabilities, physical appearance, cognition condition of the brain, quality of life, and strong blood flow. In addition, he also discussed various other aspects such as priceless memories, a fraction of our lives, stress receptors, hippocampus, and effects of stress hormones on the brain. Finally, the speaker provided very crucial and interesting information about benefits of exercise in this lecture.
If you like the colorful animals we just saw, you're going to love these next animals. Frogs. You might not normally think of frogs as being colorful, but these frogs definitely are. They are the dart poison frogs of Central and South America. Look at their striking colors, often yellow with black stripes or deep blue with black spots. Beyond being nice to look at, these markings have a purpose. They warn predators that these frogs are poisonous. When threatened, these frogs secrete a substance through their skin that would easily kill whatever animal might try to eat them. Their bright colors communicate this, and so most animals tend not to hunt them. Now, speaking of hunting, for centuries these frogs were sought after by hunters. As you might think, the hunters didn't want to eat the frogs, but rather they captured them for their poison. They would add the poison to the tips of their hunting arrows. Of course, nowadays, most hunters use guns. These days, dart poison frogs are of less interest to hunters than to medical researchers. Researchers believe that they can make new heart medicine from the poison because it acts as a stimulant on the body's nervous system. Researchers think they could use it to stimulate a weak heart. There is, however, a problem with doing research on these frogs. Those that are caught in the wild will produce their poison until they die. However, those that are born in captivity, like the ones you see here, will not produce any poison at all.
In this lecture, the speaker was talking about frogs. At the beginning of the lecture, the speaker covered many topics which include dart poison frogs, Central and South America, yellow with black stripes, predators, poisonous frogs, and bright colors. In addition, she also discussed various other aspects such as hunting arrows, medical researchers, heart medicine, body's nervous system, and research on the frogs. In conclusion, the speaker provided very crucial and interesting information about frogs in this lecture.
Australia's location is important for the world's exports, and its international trade is also important. Since Australia has a large territory with vast, uninhabited areas, all towns are scattered around. This leads to huge expenses for transportation when using trains and ferries. The government also has to pay large amounts for its telecommunications to build up the catching between these regions. The Australian people are mainly living in 5 cities: Melbourne, Sydney, Perth, and Brisbane, and Adelaide. The most special one is Perth, which is one of the most isolated cities in the world. However, this does not affect its state to be one of the largest cities in Australia. Most large companies, like the 2 leading companies, Telstra and Qantas, they are both based in Perth.
In this lecture, the speaker was talking about Australia. At the beginning of the lecture, the speaker covered many topics which include world's exports, international trade, large territory, huge expenses for transportation, and trains and ferries. In addition, he also discussed various other aspects such as telecommunications, Melbourne, Sydney, Perth, Brisbane, Adelaide, and most isolated city in the world. Finally, the speaker provided very crucial and interesting information about Australia in this lecture.
So, what do we mean by well-being? Health, happiness, a sense of achievement and contentment, a state of mind and body where people can thrive. Well-being is not something that is purely limited to people who are facing extraordinary challenges in their lifestyle, health, or personal circumstances. Everybody here has a level of well-being. Music so often forms an intuitive part of our well-being management. Music to pick us up, music to calm us down, music to heal our sorrows. Our aim, through research, is to move from this level of intuitive application of music through to informed use in our communities, to take the next step in the understanding of the power of music in human life. Music already works for us on so many levels, whether it's soothing and teaching our infants, bringing people and communities together, adding spirit to our work and personal endeavors. But there is no reason to stop here.
In this lecture, the speaker was talking about well-being. At the beginning of the lecture, the speaker covered many topics which include health, happiness, a sense of achievement, a state of mind and body, and extraordinary challenges in the lifestyle. In addition, she also discussed various other aspects such as personal circumstances, well-being management, power of music in human life, and people and communities. Finally, the speaker provided very crucial and interesting information about human well-being in this lecture.
A lot of us are not aware of the extraordinary successes of the Millennium Development Goals, several of which have achieved their targets long before the due date. That proves that this species of humanity is capable of achieving extraordinary progress if it really acts together and it really tries hard. But if I had to put it in a nutshell these days, I sort of feel that globalization has taken us by surprise, and we've been slow to respond to it. If you look at the downside of globalization, it really does seem to be sometimes overwhelming. All of the grand challenges that we face today, like climate change and human rights and demographics and terrorism and pandemics and narco-trafficking and human slavery and species loss, I could go on. We're not making an awful lot of progress against an awful lot of those challenges. So in a nutshell, that's the challenge that we all face today at this interesting point in history. That's clearly what we've got to do next. We've somehow got to get our act together, and we've got to figure out how to globalize the solutions better so that we don't simply become a species which is the victim of the globalization of problems.
In this lecture, the speaker was talking about Millennium Development Goals. At the beginning of the lecture, the speaker covered many topics which include species of humanity, extraordinary progress, downside of globalization, climate change, and human rights. In addition, he also discussed various other aspects such as demographics, terrorism, pandemics, narco-trafficking, human slavery, and species loss. In conclusion, the speaker provided very crucial and interesting information about globalization in this lecture.
It is almost impossible these days not to include photography in a course on the history of art. I disagree with people such as Walter Benjamin, who suggest that technology and art don't go well together. Photography, with its realism, its accurate representation of the thing in front of you, initially deprived many artists of their subject matter, forcing them to look in new ways. No bad thing. True, mass-produced images of, say, the Mona Lisa obviously can't provide the same experience as seeing the real painting. On the other hand, there are photographs which, to my mind, are far more thought-provoking and have greater emotional impact than a painting of the same subject ever could. Some people say that the traditional idea of an artist with a trained hand and eye is old-fashioned. They no longer believe that an artist needs specialist knowledge, but rather that he or she can simply point a camera at a scene and record it. However, on the one hand, that ignores the creative skill involved in producing photographs. On the other hand, it also ignores the fact that even in the past, painters used various technological aids. For example, the Dutch painter Vermeer used a camera obscura to help him create his images.
In this lecture, the speaker was talking about photography. At the beginning of the lecture, the speaker covered many topics which include the history of art, technology, accurate representation, artists, and the Mona Lisa. In addition, she also discussed various other aspects such as thought-provoking photographs, greater emotional impact, traditional idea of an artist, specialist knowledge, various technological aids, and camera obscura. Finally, the speaker provided very crucial and interesting information about photography in this lecture.
There are four fundamental forces at work in the universe. Some of them are very familiar from everyday life, some of them are not. So we all know about gravity. That's one of the four forces. It's what keeps us anchored to the surface of the Earth, keeps the Earth in orbit around the sun. There's another force that we're all very familiar with, which is the electromagnetic force. That's the force that is responsible for electricity, electric currents, for light, for the sun's light. That's the electromagnetic radiation coming from the sun to the Earth. There are two other forces, though, that are somewhat less familiar, and they're the nuclear forces. They are forces that are at work within the nuclei of atoms. One of those forces is called the strong nuclear force. That really is a force that binds protons to protons, binds the quarks inside of the protons and neutrons, keeping them from flying out. The other nuclear force is called the weak nuclear force. And that's a force that predominantly we know of because it's responsible for radioactivity, radioactive decay. So those four forces, strong nuclear force, weak nuclear force, electromagnetic force, and the gravitational force, those are the forces at work in the universe.
In this lecture, the speaker was talking about 4 fundamental forces in the universe. At the beginning of the lecture, the speaker covered many topics which include gravity, surface of the Earth, orbit around the Sun, electromagnetic force, electric currents, and electromagnetic radiation. In addition, he also discussed various other aspects such as strong nuclear force, weak nuclear force, protons, neutrons, radioactivity, and radioactive decay. Finally, the speaker provided very crucial and interesting information about fundamental forces in this lecture.
There's sugar in a lot of foods where you don't expect it. And of course, there's lots of sugar in donuts or ice cream or pastries or other things that are sweet, candy of course. But there are other places where you see it and you don't necessarily expect it. So as an example, peanut butter. Here's a list of ingredients from Skippy peanut butter, and you see that sugar is the second most common ingredient. Excuse me, you may know from reading food labels that these ingredients in any food label are listed in order of how much there is in the food itself. So sugar comes right after peanuts. Here's another example, beef stew. You wouldn't necessarily expect to find sugar in beef stew, but it's there. Now it's down the list of ingredients. It's actually toward the end. But if you look at the marketing of this and look at the can, it says there's fresh potatoes and carrots, but actually there's more sugar in this than there is carrots. And so you wouldn't eat something like beef stew and expect to find this to be the case.
In this lecture, the speaker was talking about amount of sugar in foods. At the beginning of the lecture, the speaker covered many topics which include donuts, ice cream, pastries, sweet candy, and peanut butter. In addition, he also discussed various other aspects such as the second most common ingredient, food labels, beef stew, marketing, fresh potatoes, and carrots. In conclusion, the speaker provided very crucial and interesting information about amount of sugar in various food items.
In addition to research about the effects climate change has on the natural environment, its impact on human health has become an expanding domain of academic study. It has been recognized that there are mental health and well-being implications of climate change, mainly due to how individuals feel about the issue. These concerns can be categorized into 2 main groups, namely the distress caused by the impacts of environmental change on lifestyle and livelihood, such as droughts affecting harvests, and secondly, a sense of losing emotional attachment to places of personal importance, which could, for example, involve a person's birthplace becoming unrecognizable due to physical change. The detrimental health and well-being effects associated with climate change disproportionately affect those living in remote rural areas, especially farmers, and unfortunately, accessing health care in these places can be very difficult for the people who may most need it.
In this lecture, the speaker was talking about effects of climate change. At the beginning of the lecture, the speaker covered many topics which include the natural environment, impact on human health, domain of academic study, mental health and well-being, lifestyle, and livelihood. In addition, she also discussed various other aspects such as impacts of environmental change, droughts, emotional attachment, places of personal importance, birthplace, physical change, detrimental health, rural areas, and farmers. In conclusion, the speaker provided very crucial information about climate change in this lecture.
Historically, women have been underrepresented in STEM subjects, That is, studies in the fields of science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. These remain areas offering successful graduates attractive career prospects in the globalised market, as they are prestigious and often have high-level entry salaries. If we look at science and engineering, here we see the number of women being encouraged to enter these fields, maintaining a steady growth with figures for female graduates remaining consistent. So, while some areas are hitting the targets set, this is still not the case in technology. And while companies may voice the desire to address the gender imbalance, the reality is that there is still an insufficient number of qualified women to take up positions both in management and as software developers to level the playing field. Yet, women are continuing to make up more of this labour force, attitudes are constantly being reshaped, and with this more optimistic outlook, there is every chance of narrowing the gender gap in the future.
In this lecture, the speaker was talking about women in STEM subjects. At the beginning of the lecture, the speaker covered many topics which include science, technology, engineering, mathematics, successful graduates, career prospects, and globalized market. In addition, he also discussed various other aspects, such as steady growth of female graduates, gender imbalance, insufficient number of qualified women, management, software developers, labor force, and optimistic outlook. In conclusion, the speaker provided very crucial and interesting information about women in this lecture.
But what exactly are asteroids? Where do they come from? An asteroid is a small, rocky object that orbits the Sun, just like the rest of the planets and celestial bodies in our solar system. Although asteroids are present throughout the solar system, most of them live in the asteroid belt, a region located between the orbits of Mars and Jupiter. The size of objects within the asteroid belt have a wide range, from being no bigger than a dust particle to almost 1,000 kilometers wide. In fact, the largest asteroid present in the asteroid belt, Ceres, is 940 kilometers wide and is considered a dwarf planet. Although the asteroid belt hosts a multitude of asteroids, it's not the only region where these rocky objects hang around. Some asteroids are also found in the orbits of planets, which means that the planet and the asteroid circle the Sun on the same elliptical path. Almost all asteroids are irregularly shaped, although a few big ones, like Ceres, are nearly spherical. Asteroids are also cratered or pitted, and their surface is thought to be covered in dust. Ever since Earth came into being, it has been struck relentlessly by asteroids and comets. In fact, the most popular theory regarding the extinction of dinosaurs is related to an asteroid that slammed into Earth, causing widespread destruction and obliterating most life forms in the global aftermath.
In this lecture, the speaker was talking about asteroids. At the beginning of the lecture, the speaker covered many topics which include a small rocky object, rest of the planets, celestial bodies, solar system, asteroid belt, and orbits of Mars and Jupiter. In addition, he also discussed various other aspects such as a dust particle, a dwarf planet, elliptical path, comets, extinction of dinosaurs, widespread destruction, and global aftermath. In conclusion, the speaker provided very crucial and interesting information about asteroids in this lecture.
Now, you might think it strange that in a lecture on biology, I'll be talking a lot about mathematics. If I may digress a bit, when I was a student, mathematics, the language of clear abstraction, had nothing to do with life sciences like biology, the sphere of messy organic forms, cutting up frogs in the lab and so on. In fact, I started doing biology precisely to avoid maths and physics, so I've had a lot of catching up to do. We are all aware of how the sciences have come to interrelate more and more, and not only will mathematics impinge more and more on biology, But also, I'm told, in the 21st century, the driving force behind mathematics will be biology. This is partly because mathematicians are always on the lookout for more areas to conquer. But a far greater reason is that the subject has been boiled down to physics and chemistry, obvious attractions for mathematicians. A number of mathematical fields can be applied to biology. For example, knot theory is used in the analysis of the tangled strands of DNA, and abstract geometry in 4 or more dimensions is used to tell us about viruses. Again, neuroscience appears to be maths-friendly, and equations can also explain why hallucinogenic drugs cause the users to see spirals.
In this lecture, the speaker was talking about biology and mathematics. At the beginning of the lecture, the speaker covered many topics which include language of clear obstruction, messy organic forms, cutting up frogs in the lab, and the 21st century. In addition, she also discussed various other aspects such as mathematicians, more areas to conquer, physics and chemistry, strands of DNA, geometry, viruses, and neuroscience. In conclusion, the speaker provided very crucial and interesting information about mathematics in this lecture.